Okay, folks, I am at Clint Murchison's estate. Well, sorta. I don't know why this has been so hard to find images of, photos of, all my research of the JFK assassination. It's been next to impossible to find any information about Clint Murchison's estate, and that would include pictures. There's one picture you kind of see, seems to be the only picture available, and I have stuck out time and time again trying to find any other images, and now I know why. I'll turn this around. It's a gated community. As you can see, a guy like me is not with a camera is not getting in there. And so you see there's fencing all the way around. As I walked along on my way from my parking space to here, I walked alongside a wall. It's a pretty good sized wall, behind which are all these big fancy homes. So I told you that General Edwin Walker lived in the elite section of Dallas, and maybe I was wrong. This might be even more exclusive, because at least in General Edwin Walker's neighborhood, I could get into the, I could see the house. Here I can't even see the house. But let me explain what is important behind these walls about the Clint Murchison estate. On November 21st, 1963, they had a party at this estate. And we know about this party because of two witnesses who have talked about it. One was Mae Newman. She was a Murchison family employee. Technically, she was a seamstress, but on occasions such as this, Mae Newman served in other capacities as well, helping with the cooking and the cleaning and the setup and tear down after these parties. What she has to say about this party is pretty amazing, actually. She was in the back room, back behind the kitchen, actually, and sitting there with several of her other employees that were co-workers with her. And somebody from the party, probably her boss, came and said, "Hey, I need somebody to volunteer to go to the airport and pick up a VIP for the party tonight." And so one of her co-workers volunteered, thinking he was going to get a big tip. He drove out in the limo. Of course, they all asked him. The boss had told him, when you pick him up, his code name is Bulldog, because he had asked, who was it? Who is this VIP? And his boss had said, "I don't know. He just goes by Bulldog. That's his code." So they all said before he left, "Find out who Bulldog is. When you find out, let us know. We're curious." Because there were some pretty amazing people, important people, on the guest list for this party, and for this guy to get special treatment, like he is the VIP of VIPs, they really were curious who it was. And so he comes back, and he's a little disgusted because he didn't get any tip, and he tells Mae Newman and the rest of them that Bulldog was J. Edgar Hoover. He went to the airport, he picked up J. Edgar Hoover and brought him back to the Murchison estate for the big party. Kind of see in there through the fencing there some of the big homes there to be doing that. But anyway, so we know that J. Edgar Hoover was at this party and that he had been picked up at the airport. We know that because of the story Mae Newman told. So she basically confirms two things: A, there was a party; B, J. Edgar Hoover was there. Another witness who told an interesting story about that night was a woman named Madeline Brown. Madeline Brown was LBJ's mistress. I mean, for like 20 years. She even had a baby with him. But she was there, and she also confirms the party. She was there dancing with her, with LBJ. She was there as a guest. Mae Newman was there as a worker. Madeline Brown was there as a guest. Of course, she was only a guest because she was with LBJ. It's interesting, after the assassination, people started kind of going into the woodwork, not wanting to talk about this party. Mae Newman was one of them. We didn't hear about the story Mae Newman had to tell until Nigel Turner did the Men Who Killed Kennedy series, and he got her to talk. It's the only time I've seen her account, whether in print or on video, is what that one time she talked to Nigel Turner. And it's, you know, she was, you could tell she was not comfortable. She didn't like the limelight. She didn't want to be telling this story. She thought it might be dangerous, and she came off as a little uneducated and a little out of her depth, and that was used against her, of course, to discredit what she had to say. And then Madeline Brown, now she did come out and say in the aftermath of the JFK assassination, a few years later anyway, what had happened at the party, what LBJ had told her, who all was there, the fact that there was a party, and what was used against her to discredit her and her testimony was the fact that she was a mistress. She was basically a prostitute. And so this is how, and I get a kick out of so many people who so often say, well, if there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination, wouldn't somebody have talked? People do talk, but their testimony gets discredited. They get discredited because the story doesn't fit the narrative. And sometimes it's their own background that's used against them. And people are quick to dismiss ladies of the night or ladies who are seamstresses and domestic help, unsophisticated types. Anyway, according to both of these witnesses, some of the attendees, important attendees at this party, were LBJ, the sitting vice president, who was in town because the next day they were motorcading through the city, Malcolm Mac Wallace, who was LBJ's hitman, and according to Roscoe White, he was Lebanon, the code name for the hitman or the assassin who was in the Texas Schoolbook Depository. And of course, we already learned there was a 34-point match fingerprint of Mac Wallace in the sniper's nest in the Texas Schoolbook Depository building, so we know he was there. Clint Murchison Sr. was there. He was a Texas oilman. It's his house. He's a Texas oilman, fantastically wealthy, big-time LBJ benefactor. His son's ranch down in Mexico was the site of the S-Force training, if you remember that from my Watergate series. The S-Force was the assassination team that Richard Nixon put together. So this guy is well connected. Harold Hunt was there, another Texas oilman. These guys are all big supporters of LBJ. LBJ's whole political career has been financed by these oil people. J. Edgar Hoover was there. He was Bulldog. And guess who else was there? Richard Nixon, former VP and head of the 5412 Committee, which was over all the CIA covert ops in the 50s while he was vice president, and also in charge of or responsible for putting the S-Force, the assassination team that was supposed to take out Castro, but later gets turned after Nixon loses the election in '60 and loses control of the S-Force, later gets turned and used against Kennedy in Dallas. So these folks are all here, coincidentally or not, the night before the assassination against JFK. According to Madeline Brown, she said, quote, "It must have been 11 o'clock. The party was breaking up at that time." Excuse me, I just fell off a little step there. I didn't pay any attention. "It must have been 11 o'clock. The party was breaking up at that time, and it shocked everyone that LBJ came in. They all went into this conference room." And when I say they all, it was all those attendees that I told you, those important people. "After emerging from the private meeting," she said, "LBJ grabbed Brown's arm and spoke into her ear, saying, quote, 'After tomorrow, those Kennedy sons of bitches will never embarrass me again. That's no threat. That's a promise.'" And he whispered that into her ear, and when she kind of pulled back and startled, he said the exact same quote to her again. The next morning, LBJ telephoned Brown and repeated the same threat again. 3 times, Madeline Brown says LBJ told her, "Those Kennedy sons of bitches, after tomorrow, those Kennedy sons of bitches will never embarrass me again. That's no threat. That's a promise." After the assassination, which happened that day, and you know, I'm sure Madeline Brown thought, I will say this, I've heard her talk about LBJ. She took him seriously because she knew his reputation. Anybody in Texas knew his reputation. So when he said that, she didn't automatically leap to assassination. She just figured that LBJ was working on something that was going to harm JFK, at least politically. And then, of course, the assassination happens. She puts two and two together. The next time she sees him, she asks him, quote, "Lyndon, you've got to tell me. You've got to talk to me. Were you involved with Kennedy's death?" And according to Madeline Brown, LBJ looked at her and said, quote, "Finally," he said, no, she goes, he paused for a moment, and she didn't think she was going to get anything out of it. And then she said, he said, "Finally, you know, the people that I know, the oil people and the CIA, they did it." So the import of that Murchison party the night before the assassination at the Murchison estate, first of all, the fact that it happened and that the attendees, all of whom played a role in the assassination as far as I'm concerned. Mac Wallace, obviously, in the Texas School Book Depository. LBJ, one of the 5 conspirators. The people that are paying for all this, the oil people, Harold Hunt, Clint Murchison, J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI guy who's going to be in charge of investigating that. You've got to have the chief investigator in your pocket before you go into it, because he's going to be responsible for investigating. You got to cover it up. And of course, the guy who's going to be the next president, LBJ, is going to appoint the Warren Commission, so he's going to be in charge of covering it up. And then Richard Nixon, the guy who put the S-Force together, the assassination team that killed JFK. All these people. So the fact that you have 2 witnesses that corroborate each other that the party happened, where it happened, and that these attendees were there, and that J. Edgar Hoover was Bulldog, and he was there, which is just a little anecdotal throw-in. And then what LBJ told Madeline Brown, not once, not twice, but 3 different times. So this is all the night before the assassination. I don't take lightly synchronicities like that. It's like when I was talking about the Redbird Airfield and ZR Rifle, and how ZR Rifle was started as an assassination program to take out an American target on American soil, and it started literally 5 months after JFK became president. 1 month after Bay of Pigs, which according to that pilot at Redbird Airfield was the reason why these folks were so mad. The CIA was so mad at JFK, wanted to kill him. So it starts 1 month after the Bay of Pigs and concludes 5 months after his death with a big payout to QG Win. You think that's coincidental? There was one American target, and QJ Win, their primary agent in ZR Rifle, was in Dallas at that airfield waiting to take somebody away after the assassination. That somebody never came because Roscoe White failed in his mission to bring somebody to that flight. And that's by Roscoe White's own admission. I don't take lightly those kind of synchronicities. And the fact that all of these folks moved into Dallas, into the Dallas area, got cover jobs at the same time, that we had this party the night before and all the principals are there. They meet secretly, they come out, LBJ spills the beans to Madeline, basically what he believes is the result of that meeting, what's going to happen the next day. And then when confronted a few days later, admits that the CIA and the oil people killed the president. So that's Clint Murchison's estate. And on to my next site.